Hi, it's Mr. Navera, and in this video we will be discussing the one of the theories of global stratification, which is the modernization theory. So before we start, we will be define first what is global stratification. So the global stratification refers to the hierarchical arrangement of individuals and groups in societies around the world. And now, we already know what is global stratification means, and let us move forward in modernization theory. But first, what are the learning objectives of this lesson? So, our learning objectives is to identify the theories of global stratification, which is the modernization theory, to determine the two main aspects of modernization theory, to examine the traditional values as barriers to the development, and also to analyze the Western cultural values that promoted competition and economic growth. The modernization theory. So the modernization theory is used to explain the process of modernization within societies. So this theory daw is ipinapaliwanag dito yung process ng pag-a-adapt ng modernization sa loob ng isang lipunan. Modernization refers to a model of a progressive transition from a pre-modern or traditional to a modern society. So, modernization daw is tumutukoy or nagre-represent siya as a model or norm para sa maunlad na pagbabago mula sa traditional o sa mga kinaugalian into modernity or into a modern society. This theory frames global stratification as a function of technological and cultural differences between nations. So when we say global stratification, ito yung system where the people or groups is nirarank, okay? Nirarank according to their status sa buhay or in their life or their authority. So, ibig sabihin, this theory, nagsiserve siya as an outline or structure sa global stratification, which is ina-identify yung differences ng mga nasa modern society and traditional society sa pagitan ng mga bansa. So, naging prominent or naging kilala ang modernization theory in the year of 1950s and 1960s na ang layunin daw nito is to provide solutions para sa mga mahihirap na countries by practicing communism. And also, layunin din nito na ipalaganap na magkaroon ng development by promoting the Western and by supporting democracy. So, sino nga ba si Maximilian Karl Emil Weber? So, he is a German sociologist, also known as Max Weber. The current modernization theory was originated with him regarding the role of rationality and irrationality in the transition from traditional to modern society. So, yung origin ng modernization theory is nagmula kay Max Weber. So, bakit ba the current modernization theory? So, dahil may mga sociologist na ginamit yung idea ni Max Weber at nag-provide sila ng kani-kanilang interpretation about sa modernization theory. So, yun nga, the current modernization theory was originated with him regarding sa pagiging reasonable and unreasonable transition from traditional to modern society. So, sino naman ito si Talcott Parsons? He is an American sociologist of the classical tradition, best known for his social action theory and structural functionalism. He translated the works of Weber in regards with modernization theory into English in the 1930s and provided his own interpretation. So, ito na nga yung sinasabi ko. Si Talcott Parsons ay isa sa mga sociologist na nag-translate sa idea ni Max Weber in regards with the modernization theory in the year of 1930. And also, hindi niya lang ito i-translate but also nag-provide din siya ng sarili niyang interpretation sa modernization theory. Kaya mas lumawak pa yung philosophy sa modernization theory. So, as we can see, this map, ipinapakita dito yung differences ng countries sa ibang countries. Okay? So as we can see, the color green represents as the first world or mas tinatawag as the West. Sila yung mga nasa block of democratic industrialized countries. Okay? So dito naman sa color yellow, nagre-represent naman siya as the second world. Sila naman yung mga nasa eastern block of the communist socialist states. However, dito naman sa color red, nagre-represents naman ito as the third world. Okay, sila naman yung mga hindi belong sa mga block or sila yung the remaining 3/4 of the world population. So, we have here the two main aspects of modernization theory. First is the explanation of why poor countries are underdeveloped, and second is to propose solution to underdevelopment countries. So first is the explanations of why poor countries are underdeveloped. So meaning to say, the modernization theory daw is ipinapaliwanag nito kung bakit daw yung mga kinukonsider as may hirap na bansa is hindi umuunlad. And also, it proposed solutions to underdevelopment countries. Meaning to say, one of the main aspects of the modernization theory is hindi lang to explain kung bakit the poor nations are still poor nations, but also nagpo-propose din ito ng solution para sa mga not fully developed countries o yung mga nasa third world categories. So we have here the Indian caste system. So as we can see on this picture or illustration, this is the caste system. Caste system is the social hierarchy in India. So now, kung mapapansin natin, at the very top of the caste system, dito nakakategorize yung priest. And they were at the top because they are considered as sila yung pinaka-closest to the gods. Okay? So, sa baba nito, we have the warriors, the kings, the rulers, that as also known as the satriyas. And yung vices naman, sila yung mga nasa middle class, like yung mga traders, merchants, and minor officials. Okay, so that's in vices. And right below, we have the sudras. Here naman sa sudras, nakakategorize naman dito yung mga unskilled workers, like yung mga farmers. And then, below them, we have the untouchables. So here in untouchables, sila yung mga kinukonsidered as not really part ng society. Okay? They are not really part ng society. Like yung mga naglilinis sa kalsada at mga pulubi. Okay, like that. So, ang caste system is isa sa mga good example in ascribed status system based doon sa kanilang traditional values. So, modernization theory, what prevents development? According to modernization theories, obstacles to development are internal to poorer countries. Underdeveloped countries are underdeveloped because they have the wrong cultural, social systems, wrong values, and practices that prevent development from taking place. So, referring to the modernization theories, yung mga not fully developed countries daw, they will consistently stick in the mud because they have the wrong ideas, the wrong customs, they have the wrong social behavior, wrong values, and wrong practices na ito yung nagiging reasons or ito yung nagiging dahilan upang pigilan sila sa pag-unlad. So, in other words, yung mga poorer countries daw is masyadong nakagapos sila. Masyado silang nakagapos sa belief system nila. That is why hindi sila makapag-improve or hindi sila makapag-move on. Na ito yung nagiging dahilan kung bakit we become our own criticism. So according to Parsons, he argued that traditional values serve as barriers sa development ng countries. And here, we will be discussing kung ano ba yung mga bagay na included kung bakit may mga countries that are still underdeveloped. Okay? So, firstly, we have the patricularism. Patricularism. In patricularism, it is where people are allocated into roles based on their affective or familiar relationship to those already in positions of power. So, example in particularism, it is where a politician or head ng isang company na mas binibigyan ng trabaho yung mga taong mas malapit sa kanya or parte ng kanyang pamilya kaysa sa mga taong mas deserving ng trabahong yon. So, siyempre, nawawalan ng opportunity yung ibang tao na makapagtrabaho at masustentuhan yung kanilang pangangailangan dahil nga sa pagiging bias nila na ang tanging layunin lang nila is yung pansariling interest. Okay, so that's in particularism. So next, we have the collectivism. In collectivism, this is where the individual is expected to put the group or the family or the village before the self-interest. So here in collectivism, this might means that the children are expected na hindi muna mag-aral at their very younger age para alagaan or i-prioritize muna yung kanilang mga magulang kaysa sa pananatili sa paaralan at matuto. So, meaning to say, in collectivism, mas inuuna dito yung mga taong malapit sa kanya over his or her pansariling kagustuhan or her self-interest. So, that's in collectivism. Next, we have here the patriarchy. Patriarchal structures are much more entrenched in less developed countries, and so women are much less likely to gain positions of political or economic power and remain in traditional housewife roles. So, in patriarchy naman, ito yung tinatawag natin na gender inequality. Okay? So, which is, yung mga kababaihan daw is walang authority or walang rights na mamuno sa isang government because they are considered as weak. And para sa kanila, ang tanging role lang nila is yung pagiging housewife. Okay? So, that's in patriarchy. So, in order for them daw to develop, yung mga not fully developed countries, kailangan nilang i-adapt yung way of living ng mga fully developed countries. When it comes to economic growth, kailangan nilang i-adapt yung cultural values nila. And para daw magawa nila yon, kailangan nila ng tulong and support ng mga nasa western governments and ng mga nasa companies sa paraan na makipag-ugnayan sa kanila at mamuhunan. Okay. Modernization theory favored a capitalist industrial model of development. So here, naniniwala sila na ang capitalism or the free market is nagbibigay ng support in order for them to have a industrialization. So here, we have the industrial in capitalism and we will be discussing it one by one. So let's start first with industrial. Industrial, it refers to production taking place in factories rather than in the home or small workshops. This is a large scale of production. So, dito sa industrial, tumutukoy ito sa manufacturing na ginagawa sa mga pabrika kaysa sa loob ng bahay or sa mga maliliit na pagawaan. So, in other words, when we say industrial, this is the large scale of production. So we are done explaining industrial and now let's jump in with capitalism. So what is capitalism? Capitalism, it is a system where private money is invested in industry in order to make a profit and goods are produced are for sale in the marketplace rather than for private consumption. So in capitalism, isa itong paraan where yung pansariling pera natin is ipinapamahuna natin para magkaroon ng tubo. Like for example nito is yung sa lending. So yung perang iniipon natin sa bangko, ginagamit nila yon. Ginagamit nila yon para lumago yung pera natin. So isa ito sa mga example. And also in capitalism, example pa dito is yung mga paninda natin is ibinebenta natin sa marketplace instead of pangkonsumo natin sa pang-araw-araw. Kapalit nun ay pera. Example dito is yung mga products like mga gulay at prutas na ibinebenta natin sa marketplace. Okay, so that's the capitalism. And lastly, we have the ascribed status and fatalism. In ascribed status is where your position in society is ascribed or determined at birth based on your caste, ethnic group, or gender. So, in ascribed status in fatalism naman, best example nito is yung caste system na which is I already discussed it earlier, yung caste system ng India. So, in contrast, naniniwala si Parsons na in spite of na there are barriers for the development, syempre, meron ding magko-contrast para matulungan yung mga not fully developed countries na maging fully developed countries naman. Okay? So, first, we have the individualism. Okay? So, what is individualism? So, in individualism, this is where individuals put themselves first rather than the family or the village or the clan. So, in individualism, ito yung opposite ng collectivism. Kung sa collectivism is mas inuuna nila yung kanilang pamilya over her self-interest, dito naman sa individualism, mas inuuna naman nila yung sarili nila over his or her families. But in a positive way, okay? In a positive way. They uses their talents to better themselves, like getting an education or setting up businesses. Okay, so that's in individualism. And next, we have here the universalism. In universalism, this involves applying the same standards to everyone and judging everyone according to the same standards. So, in universalism naman, ito naman yung opposite ng particularism. Okay? Kung sa particularism is pagiging bias, okay? Dito naman sa universalism, ito yung pantay na pagkilala. Okay? Ito yung pantay na pagtingin sa mga tao without basing kung ano ba yung positions niya sa isang society. Okay? So, that's in universalism. And lastly, in Western cultural values that promoted competition and economic group is the achieve status and meritocracy. Achieve status is where you achieve your success based on your own individual efforts. So, in achieve status and meritocracy, ito yung achievements ng isang individual based on sa kanyang efforts. Okay? So, meaning to say, if we live in a truly meritocratic society, ito yung magiging advantage ng isang country in order for them para maging fully developed countries. Like for example, our countries or the Philippines, if we live in a truly meritocratic, ito yung magiging advantage natin in order for us para maging fully developed countries tayo. So, okay, that's the end of our discussion. If you have some questions, you are free to contact me. Okay? So, thank you for your time and thank you for listening. God bless and bye-bye.